It is the year 937 AD. The winds of change are sweeping across the island. The Battle of Brunanburh is coming, a battle that will decide the fate of England. The great armies are gathering. On one side, Athelstan, king of the Anglo-Saxons, and his brother Edmund stand ready to defend the kingdom they have fought to unite. On the other, a mighty alliance of Vikings, Scots, and Irish kings, all intent on breaking the fragile unity that Athelstan has built. The stakes could not be higher. Everything they've worked for is about to be put to the ultimate test. For 5 centuries, the land we now call England was a patchwork of warring kingdoms, the air thick with the clash of swords and the cries of battle. From Lindisfarne to Wessex, the Viking raids, bloody rebellions, and ruthless power struggles tore the island apart. Kingdoms rose and fell, kings were crowned and killed, every ruler clinging to power, every kingdom fighting for survival in a world where only the strongest could hope to endure. The struggles of Alfred the Great, the relentless determination of Edward the Elder, all of them laid the foundations for what was to come. And what was to come was the brutal, bloody, final act, the Battle of Brunanburh. Athelstan's journey to becoming the first king of a united England began long before his military triumphs. Born around 894 AD, he grew up in a world shaped by both family dynamics and powerful mentors. His father, Edward the Elder, was determined to prepare him for leadership, but the family court was fraught with challenges, including the mysterious disappearance of his mother, Ecgwin, who was likely set aside due to political reasons. According to Sarah Foote, in her detailed biography Athelstan, the First King of England, Ecgwin's disappearance from the court may have been politically motivated, as Edward needed to secure a stronger marriage alliance. Ecgwin's removal from court marked a turning point in Athelstan's early life, leading him to be raised in Mercia by his powerful and influential aunt, Ethelflaed, Lady of Mercia. Foote emphasizes the significance of this relocation, noting that Athelstan was effectively raised as a Mercian prince, gaining first-hand knowledge of Mercian politics and governance. Mercia became Athelstan's training ground, where he was shaped by the military strategies and leadership style of Ethelflaed, herself a formidable military leader. Frank Stenton, in his classic work Anglo-Saxon England, highlights Ethelflaed's pivotal role in the defense of Mercia, stressing her leadership during campaigns against the Vikings. Under her wing, Athelstan learned the complexities of warfare and diplomacy, watching her fortify Mercian towns and navigate alliances, all of which influenced his future reign as king. Beyond his military education, Athelstan was also deeply influenced by his religious and intellectual training. His tutor, Plegmund, the Archbishop of Canterbury, played a critical role in shaping his moral and intellectual outlook. Pauline Stafford, in Unification and Conquest, describes Plegmund's mentorship as foundational, noting that the Archbishop's guidance provided Athelstan with a grounding in both Christian theology and the administration of law, key elements of Athelstan's future reign. Athelstan's exposure to the Mercian court and its warriors, combined with his intellectual education, prepared him for the challenges that lay ahead. Sarah Foote and Frank Stenton both argue that Athelstan's upbringing in Mercia gave him a unique perspective on Anglo-Saxon rule, as he was exposed to 2 great Anglo-Saxon traditions, that of Wessex and Mercia. This duality not only informed his military strategies, but also his approach to diplomacy, particularly in his dealings with the Vikings and other rulers. Athelstan's early years were a crucible where the pressures of family politics, military strategy, and scholarly education forged him into the leader who would one day unite the fractured Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Under the mentorship of Ethelflaed and Plegmund, Athelstan became both a warrior king and a scholarly ruler, equipped with the skills and vision necessary to forge a united England. 。 When Edward the Elder died in 924 AD, the question of succession cast a shadow over the realm. Edward had multiple sons, and in Anglo-Saxon England, the line of succession was not always straightforward. Athelstan, despite his status as Edward's eldest son by his first wife Ecgwin, did not immediately ascend to the throne without challenge. According to some sources, Edward's second son, Aelfwerd, may have briefly claimed the throne. Certain manuscripts of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle suggest that Aelfwerd was recognized as king in Wessex, the heartland of the Anglo-Saxon kings, while Athelstan was favoured in Mercia where he had been raised. Frank Stenton, in Anglo-Saxon England, notes that there was some regional tension between Wessex and Mercia, and this may have played a role in the contested succession. Aelfwerd's reign, if it happened at all, was brief. Within a few weeks of Edward's death, Aelfwerd himself passed away. This sudden turn of events left Athelstan in a precarious position. He now had to secure his claim to both Wessex and Mercia, and this was no easy task. The Wessex nobility, wary of Athelstan's close ties to Mercia, were hesitant to accept him as king. Pauline Stafford, in Unification and Conquest, highlights how Athelstan's upbringing in Mercia, despite preparing him for leadership, also created distrust among the West Saxon ealdormen, who feared a shift in power away from their traditional stronghold. Athelstan's coronation in 925 was not immediate, and it took time for him to consolidate his power. Sarah Foote, in Athelstan, the first king of England, notes that Athelstan faced significant opposition from the nobles of Wessex, who may have preferred another son of Edward. However, Athelstan's military experience, his diplomatic acumen, and the support of key Mercian allies eventually allowed him to overcome these obstacles. One significant moment in this power struggle was Athelstan's coronation at Kingston upon Thames, a symbolic location where both Wessex and Mercian kings had been crowned. This ceremony, which cemented his authority, was more than a mere formality. It was a clear declaration of his intent to rule over both Wessex and Mercia, and ultimately all of England. Despite these challenges, Athelstan's rise to power was marked by strategic alliances and key victories that solidified his position as king. He used his Mercian connections and his military prowess to secure the loyalty of the West Saxon ealdormen, and from this point forward he began to build the foundations for a united Anglo-Saxon kingdom. With the crown finally on his head, Athelstan's reign began in earnest in 925 AD, but being crowned was only the first step. Now, Athelstan had to secure his authority over both Wessex and Mercia, unite the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and address the ever-present threat of Viking incursions. Athelstan's first challenge came from within. The nobles of Wessex, who had initially been reluctant to accept him due to his strong ties to Mercia, needed reassurance. Many of these ealdormen had served his father, Edward the Elder, and were wary of Athelstan's connections with Mercia. According to Sarah Foote, in her work Athelstan, the First King of England, Athelstan had to walk a delicate line between asserting his dominance and maintaining the goodwill of the Wessex nobility. Foote emphasizes that Athelstan used strategic marriages and land grants to secure loyalty among his noble supporters, thus gradually solidifying his power in Wessex. At the same time, Athelstan moved swiftly to strengthen his ties with Mercia. His upbringing in the Mercian court under his aunt, Ethelfled, had already won him the trust of many Mercian leaders, but now, as king, he needed to formalize those alliances. He did this by maintaining strong personal and political ties with key Mercian nobles, particularly those who had fought against the Vikings during his aunt's rule. Frank Stenton, in Anglo-Saxon England, discusses how Athelstan carefully balanced his dual inheritance from Wessex and Mercia, ensuring that both regions saw him as their legitimate ruler. One of the most significant moves Athelstan made during his early reign was his diplomacy with foreign powers. Athelstan, unlike many of his predecessors, had a far-reaching vision that went beyond the borders of England. He sought to establish alliances with continental rulers, thus securing external support and recognition for his rule. He arranged marriages for his sisters to powerful European leaders, including Otto I of Germany and Charles the Simple of France. These marriages not only brought prestige to Athelstan's court, but also helped to secure political stability at home, as they created a network of alliances that would discourage Viking raids and other external threats. Athelstan's diplomacy was not limited to Europe. He also worked to secure peace with the Welsh kingdoms. In 927, shortly after securing his rule in both Wessex and Mercia, Athelstan summoned Welsh kings to his court at Hereford and forced them to pledge their loyalty to him. According to Foote, this event marked the first time in recorded history that Wales recognised an English king as overlord. By securing the loyalty of the Welsh princes, Athelstan created a buffer zone between his kingdom and potential Viking raids from the west, further strengthening his position. This combination of internal diplomacy with his nobles and external alliances with foreign rulers set the stage for Athelstan's next major challenge, securing his northern borders and dealing with the Viking presence in Northumbria. As Frank Stenton argues, Athelstan's early reign was marked by his ability to balance military force with diplomacy, ensuring that England remained stable while he consolidated his power. The battle for unity, however, was far from over. While Athelstan had secured peace with the Welsh and brought stability to Wessex and Mercia, the Viking-ruled kingdom of Northumbria remained a constant threat. The next chapter of Athelstan's reign would be defined by his campaign to bring Northumbria under his control and complete the dream of a united England. By 927 AD, Athelstan had successfully consolidated his rule over Wessex, Mercia, and the Welsh territories. But his reign would not be truly complete until the kingdom of Northumbria was brought under his control. The northern kingdom, still largely influenced by the Vikings, remained the final piece in Athelstan's dream of a unified England. Athelstan's campaign for Northumbria was not just about territorial conquest. It was about cementing his legacy as the first king to rule over all of England. The Vikings had controlled Northumbria for decades, turning it into a stronghold for their raids and assaults on Anglo-Saxon lands. The region had long resisted Wessex control, and even under Edward the Elder, the Northumbrians remained defiant. But Athelstan, with his powerful army and formidable alliances, was determined to bring them to heel. According to Sarah Foote, in Athelstan, the first king of England, Athelstan's conquest of Northumbria began with a diplomatic approach. In 927, he managed to secure the surrender of the Viking king of York, Sihtric, through negotiation. Athelstan arranged a marriage alliance with Sihtric by offering his sister as a bride. This was a strategic move aimed at binding Northumbria to his rule peacefully, but it did not last long. Sihtric died soon after, and with his death, any hope for a peaceful unification disappeared. Athelstan, now faced with a more hostile Northumbria, resorted to military force. He marched north, where he faced Viking warlords and their allies. The Chronicle of Ethelwerd recounts how Athelstan swiftly took control of York, the Viking capital of Northumbria, and forced the submission of the remaining Viking leaders. This victory marked the first time a single king ruled all of England, including the northern territories that had long been under Viking control. However, Athelstan's success in Northumbria was not merely a result of brute force. Frank Stenton in Anglo-Saxon England emphasizes that Athelstan's genius lay in his diplomacy and ability to forge alliances. After securing Northumbria, Athelstan summoned the kings of Scotland, Wales and Strathclyde to a meeting in Aymont, where they pledged their loyalty to him. By bringing these rulers under his overlordship, Athelstan extended his influence well beyond England's traditional borders, making him one of the most powerful rulers in Western Europe at the time. Despite these successes, the north remained a volatile region. Viking raiders continued to pose a threat, and many of the northern leaders resented Athelstan's dominance. This tension would eventually culminate in the Battle of Brunanburh, where Athelstan faced a grand coalition of Vikings, Scots, and Welsh forces. But for now, Athelstan's campaign in 927 solidified his control over Northumbria, allowing him to claim the title King of all Britain. The conquest of Northumbria marked a turning point in Athelstan's reign. He was no longer just the king of Wessex and Mercia, he was the undisputed ruler of England, the first Anglo-Saxon king to unite all of the kingdom's major regions under one crown. By 937 AD, King Athelstan had successfully unified the kingdoms of Wessex, Mercia and Northumbria, making him the most powerful ruler in England. However, his ambition to create a united and peaceful kingdom was still challenged by external threats. The Viking kings, the Scottish rulers and the kings of Strathclyde had grown increasingly hostile towards Athelstan's dominance. They sought to overthrow him, forming a grand coalition to reclaim their territories and halt his expansionist ambitions. This alliance would set the stage for one of the most decisive and brutal battles in British history, the Battle of Brunanburh. The Battle of Brunanburh was not merely a skirmish, but a monumental confrontation between Athelstan's English forces and a powerful coalition of enemies. The coalition was led by Olaf Guthfrithson, the Viking king of Dublin, who sought to reclaim Northumbria and restore Viking dominance in the north. Constantine II, King of Scotland, who saw Athelstan's growing power as a direct threat to his kingdom. Owain, King of Strathclyde, who feared being subsumed under Athelstan's rule. This coalition represented a formidable alliance of Vikings, Scots and Britons, all determined to end Athelstan's reign and drive his forces from the north. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle vividly describes the size and scope of the invading forces, noting that they sailed across the Irish Sea with a massive fleet ready to meet Athelstan in battle. Sarah Foote emphasizes in Athelstan, the first king of England, that this was a battle not just for control over Northumbria, but for the very future of England. If Athelstan lost, the dream of a united kingdom would crumble, and the Vikings, Scots, and Britons would regain their independence. The precise location of Brunanburh remains a matter of historical debate, though many scholars suggest it was located somewhere in northern England, likely in the vicinity of modern-day Merseyside or Cheshire. Wherever the battlefield lay, it was large enough to accommodate the massive armies of both sides. Athelstan, aware of the impending invasion, moved quickly to meet his enemies on the battlefield. He assembled a force composed of Anglo-Saxons, Mercian warriors, and men from Wessex, all of whom were fiercely loyal to their king. His army was well-trained and battle-hardened, having faced years of conflict against Viking invaders. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describes the Battle of Brunanburh as a bloodbath, the greatest slaughter since the Danes came to Britain. Both sides suffered enormous casualties, with shields clashing, swords striking, and warriors falling by the thousands. The fighting raged from dawn to dusk, with neither side willing to give ground. Athelstan's forces, though outnumbered, were led with precision. Frank Stenton in Anglo-Saxon England suggests that Athelstan's experience in military strategy was a key factor in the battle's outcome. He positioned his men strategically, making the most of the terrain and using his elite Anglo-Saxon warriors to punch through enemy lines at critical moments. The Viking and Scottish forces, despite their overwhelming numbers, were divided in their command. Olaf Guthfrithson and Constantine II struggled to coordinate their armies effectively, allowing Athelstan to exploit weaknesses in their ranks. The chronicle notes that Athelstan's forces were particularly effective in countering the Viking tactic of shield walls, breaking through with fierce charges that shattered the enemy formations. As the battle wore on, the Anglo-Saxon forces gained the upper hand. Athelstan and his half-brother Edmund fought side by side, leading their men into the heart of the battle. The Chronicle of Ethelweard and other sources describe how the Viking warlords and Scottish kings were ultimately forced into retreat, their armies shattered. The Battle of Brunanburh was a decisive victory for Athelstan. Olaf Guthfrithson fled back to Ireland, and Constantine II was forced to retreat northward, humiliated and defeated. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle commemorates this moment with a grand poem celebrating Athelstan as the ruler of all Britain, praising his triumph as a victory for the English people. The defeat of this grand coalition cemented Athelstan's authority over Northumbria, and for the first time, England stood united under one king. This victory marked the pinnacle of Athelstan's reign, securing his legacy as the first king of a united England. Sarah Foote argues that the Battle of Brunanburh was a watershed moment in the history of Britain. Not only did it establish Athelstan's rule over England, but it also signalled the end of Viking ambitions in the north. The defeat was so severe that the Viking threat in Britain began to decline, leading to a period of relative peace and stability under Athelstan's successors. The Brunanburh poem, recorded in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, captures the emotional weight of the battle and the significance of Athelstan's victory. It portrays the battle as a divinely ordained triumph, with Athelstan and Edmund hailed as the saviours of England, cementing their place in history. After his triumphant victory at the Battle of Brunanburh, Athelstan's reign entered its final phase. Though his grip on power was now secure and his status as the first king of a united England was cemented, the last years of Athelstan's life were not without challenges. His health began to deteriorate, and the pressures of maintaining control over a vast and newly unified kingdom weighed heavily on him. Athelstan spent the next 2 years working to strengthen his kingdom's defences, particularly in the north, where the Viking threat, though diminished, was never fully eradicated. He continued his policy of diplomatic relations with foreign rulers, consolidating alliances with the kings of Scotland, Wales, and even rulers on the continent. These alliances were vital in ensuring that no major rebellion or invasion would disrupt the fragile peace that England now enjoyed. However, Athelstan's reign was not without its dissenters. In 939 AD, just 2 years after his greatest victory, Athelstan died at the age of 45. He passed away at Gloucester, and his body was buried at Malmesbury Abbey, a place he had long favoured, and to which he had made significant donations during his lifetime. His death was a profound moment for the kingdom, as Athelstan left no legitimate children to succeed him. His half-brother, Edmund I, ascended to the throne after him, but the unity Athelstan had forged was now vulnerable. Athelstan's legacy as a statesman, military leader, and unifier of England endured long after his death. He had brought Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria, and other regions together under a single crown, creating a vision of England that would inspire future kings and leaders for generations. His policies of legal reform, military strength, and religious patronage helped establish England as a centralised state, laying the foundations for the English monarchy. As historian Frank Stenton emphasises, Athelstan's reign was the pinnacle of Anglo-Saxon power, but it also marked the beginning of a more tumultuous period in English history, Although he had unified the kingdom, the death of Athelstan left a power vacuum that his successors would struggle to fill. Athelstan's death in 939 AD marked the end of an era, but his achievements laid the groundwork for future generations. The struggle for power among his successors and the ongoing Viking incursions would shape England's trajectory in the years to come. Athelstan's dream of a united England would be tested repeatedly, especially as Viking raids persisted and internal divisions threatened the kingdom. The seeds of political instability planted during the Anglo-Saxon period would eventually culminate in the events leading up to the Battle of Hastings in 1066 AD. This battle, in 1066 AD, which William the Conqueror defeated the Anglo-Saxon king Harold Godwin's son, would mark a pivotal moment in English history as Norman rule replaced centuries of Anglo-Saxon dominance. Athelstan's legacy, however, remained central to the English identity. His efforts to unite the kingdom and his contributions to law, military reform, and diplomacy were foundational to what England would become. The Norman conquest was not merely the end of the Anglo-Saxon era, but the next phase in the evolution of England, an evolution set in motion by Athelstan's reign. In our next video, we will dive into this journey towards Hastings. We will explore the decades of conflict, dynastic struggles, and Viking influences that led to the dramatic showdown in 1066, one of the most iconic battles in English history. How did the legacy of Athelstan and the Anglo-Saxon kings shape this path? What were the critical moments that led to the Norman conquest? Join us as we embark on the journey towards Hastings 1066, the next turning point in England's history. After 500 years of struggle, bloodshed, and endless battles, England has finally emerged. From the early days of fragmented Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to the rise of iconic figures like Alfred the Great, the road to unity was paved with warriors' blood and defined by the threat of invasion, especially from the great heathen army. It was a time of endless resilience, where kings were forged in the fires of battle, and the fate of the land was often decided by the edge of a sword. With the reign of Athelstan, the dream of a united England became a reality. His ability to consolidate Wessex, Mercia, and Northumbria under a single crown marked the culmination of centuries of warfare and political maneuvering. Now, after centuries of division, England is born, its people united, its borders secure. The first true king of all England had risen. But the story doesn't end here. England's history is far from over. In fact, the coming years would present new challenges and new enemies on the horizon as the kingdom moved towards another turning point in 1066 at the Battle of Hastings. On a lighter note, thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed exploring this epic journey through England's tumultuous rise. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the entire History of European Middle Ages channel, where we bring you deeper insights into medieval history with every video. Be sure to like, share, and comment to let us know your thoughts. And of course, check out our next videos, where we continue this fascinating story of Europe's Middle Ages journey and beyond. Stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.